Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're going straight into the heart of Martin Scorsese's Goodfellas. It's a film that's really stuck with us for decades, based on Nicholas Pileggi's Wise Guy. Our aim today is to go beyond just liking the movie, right?
Yeah.
We want to really understand why it resonates so deeply and, well, what it tells us about the real lives and the intense world it portrays.
Yeah, and we've gathered some fascinating material for this. We're looking at how critics have, stacked it up against The Godfather, exploring those ongoing discussions about cultural portrayals,
Right.
diving into what fans themselves make of it online, getting a peek behind the scenes at the making of the film, the iconic music.
Oh, the music is key.
Absolutely, hearing directly from Ray Liotta and even taking a look at the actual people who inspired these characters.
Exactly. So this isn't just a film review. It's really a plunge into ambition, loyalty's breaking point, the stark reality of violence, and that twisted version of the American dream you see in organized crime.
Yeah.
We'll be pulling apart Scorsese's filmmaking choices, how the film was received then and now, and crucially, just how close it sticks to the truth. Okay, let's unpack this. And where better to start than with the two titans of the genre, Goodfellas versus The Godfather.
It's the comparison that always comes up, isn't it? Entertainment Weekly famously put them head to head. And the argument, well, it often boils down to this. The Godfather is seen as this grand, almost Shakespearean tragedy.
Baratic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Tackling these huge themes, family, power, even the soul of America. It's got this heightened, almost regal feel to it.
Right, very much a heightened reality. The Corleones are almost mythical figures, aren't they?
Yeah.
Removed from the everyday grind.
Totally. Whereas Goodfellas, the argument goes, feels, well, raw, immediate. It's a visceral look at a very specific way of life. You can feel Scorsese's connection to that world.
Yeah, that authenticity, it doesn't hold back.
But then the counter argument pops up. Is Goodfellas maybe limited by that specificity? Is it just a really compelling portrayal of some, frankly, awful people? The Godfather, you see, taps into these universal themes that resonate across time and cultures. That opening line, "I believe in America," it signals that bigger scope.
So, The Godfather as the enduring morality tale, maybe? And Goodfellas as more. Niche, a film buff's favorite.
That's often the distinction people make. Some see Godfather being studied for generations, while Goodfellas, for all its admiration, maybe has a different kind of shelf life.
But here's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
Because the Goodfellas fans argue that it's precisely that deep dive into this specific lifestyle of the individuals that elevates it.
Right.
They say The Godfather's themes are so broad, you could almost plug any powerful group into that story.
That's a crucial point. And when you look at Goodfellas in the context of Scorsese's other films, you see those recurring themes, don't you? Guilt, destructive masculinity.
Absolutely.
So while The Godfather might offer a sweeping moral commentary, Goodfellas just throws you right into these very specific personal struggles. It feels more immediate, more engaging for a lot of people.
And let's be honest, which one grabs you faster from the opening scene?
Chuckles slightly. Yeah, fair point. Goodfellas definitely hits the ground running.
And the EW debate just sort of shrugs and says, let the Academy decide. Followed by some pretty sarcastic comments about the Oscars. So no clear winner, but it frames the different approaches really well.
Definitely.
Okay, let's pivot now to something that's, well, stirred up quite a bit of discussion recently. The film's portrayal of cultural stereotypes.
Right. This brings us to the news about AMC Networks adding that content warning to Goodfellas.
Yeah, I saw that.
The advisory basically says the film has language and adore cultural stereotypes inconsistent with today's standards and might offend some viewers.
And it's worth noting, AMC started doing this back in 2020 for older films with potentially offensive content. It definitely makes you think about how we watch older movies now.
It does. What's the responsibility there? But there's a strong counter-argument, too, especially for Goodfellas. Some say the film's humor, that almost absurdist take on things, is actually what sets it apart. It avoids getting bogged down in that sort of tragic grandeur you see in other gangster epics. That dark comedy is part of the draw.
Which actually leads us perfectly into how audiences themselves interpret the film. There was a great Reddit thread trying to unpack the meaning of Goodfellas, and it brings up that tension, between the glamour and the grim reality.
Oh yeah, that thread was fascinating. What's really striking is how many people said the film kind of normalizes the gangster life for the viewer.
Like Karen's experience.
Exactly. Several people mentioned mirroring Karen's journey, being drawn in by those early scenes, like the Copacabana walkthrough, the big wedding. They feel almost dreamlike.
Yeah, seductive.
Totally. And then, bam, that FBI agent shows up at the end. People described it as this sudden jolt back to reality. Suddenly he's the normal one, and Henry and Karen seem almost desperate, cartoonish.
It flips your perspective completely, forces you to reconsider who you've been identifying with all along.
Precisely. So a lot of people see the film as a critique. It shows the allure, yeah, but ultimately exposes how destructive it all is.
Someone made a great point about Henry ending up with literally nothing.
Right. Just addiction, stories, all his friends are dead or in prison, often because of him, even poor Spider. It's bleak when you actually look at the outcome.
And Karen's role is debated too, isn't it? Is she complicit? Willfully ignorant?
Or is she more like us, the audience, maybe even reflecting Scorsese's own initial fascination that the film then tries to dismantle? It's complex.
Which gets us to that central question. Does Goodfellas accidentally end up glorifying the lifestyle, even with the bad ending?
That's the million-dollar question. People always bring up the Copacabana scene, how undeniably cool it is. Some even suggest, well, maybe if they weren't so greedy.
But others push back hard on that, right? Saying greed is baked into the whole system. You can't separate it.
Exactly. It's inherent. It's interesting. Some compare it to The Irishman, which shows mafia life as much more, well, mundane. Frank Sheeran's loyalty leads to emptiness.
Yeah, very different vibe.
And some interpretations get really introspective, suggesting that if you find Goodfellas cool, maybe that says something about your own values or desires.
Oof. That's a challenging thought.
Isn't it? Some argue Scorsese intentionally makes the second half uglier, more chaotic, precisely to counter any romanticism from the first half.
But then you have the view that both Goodfellas and The Godfather romanticize things just differently. Maybe Godfather Part I makes the Corleones seem like protectors.
Right, against a corrupt outside world. While Goodfellas' sheer speed might not let the horror fully sink in sometimes, it just keeps moving.
That ending, Henry complaining about the pasta sauce and witness protection. It's so mundane, so pathetic.
Apparently Paul Schrader wanted to change it, make it more dramatic maybe, but Scorsese insisted on that realism. It's stark.
Which feeds into the idea that the film tricks you, doesn't it? Makes you admire these guys, then pulls the rug out, showing their downfall. Makes you kind of complicit in that initial attraction.
Yeah, like you get the fantasy, all the perks, none of the downsides, it seems, before reality crashes in. It reminds me of what some viewers with a Catholic background said.
Oh.
Seeing Scorsese's crime films as sort of modern morality plays, you indulge in the vice, see the allure, but then bam, the brutal consequences arrive. No escape.
So the structure is key.
Yeah.
First half, the glamour, the rise.
Yeah.
Second half, the chaos, the fall. From I want to be a gangster to, oh, that's why you shouldn't.
Exactly. And underlining it all, many pointed out the lack of genuine connection. No real friendship, love, loyalty, just power and money.
Yet people love the film, even if the characters are awful.
Well, the filmmaking is just incredible, isn't it? The style, the energy, the momentum, it pulls you in. It's like a peek behind the curtain into this fantasy of living outside the rules.
One person on Reddit shared something really personal about their uncle struggling after leaving a life of crime, finding it hard to adjust back to normal.
Wow. That really brings it home, doesn't it? And there's the argument that Goodfellas was revolutionary because it showed the real mob, warts and all, a direct counterpunch to The Godfather's glossiness, even if some audiences still misinterpret it.
And we can't forget the technical stuff, the freeze frames, jump cuts, that constant voiceover pulling you into Henry's head.
Right. Someone even compared it to Reservoir Dogs, focusing on the before and after, not the heist itself. And ultimately, a lot of people just appreciate it as a mostly true story, brilliantly acted.
There was that really detailed analysis of Karen as a metaphor for Henry's love affair with the gangster life itself, the perks, the rules within that world.
Yeah, contrasted with modern anxieties, it gets deep.
Huh.
But someone also pointed out a tiny continuity error with a car model year. Gotta love the details people spot.
But it boils down to that conflict, right? Seduction versus destruction. These guys aren't community protectors, they're criminals.
The film shays the glamour, then rips it away, leaving Henry in that suburban hell, having broken the code.
Interestingly, a few people felt it lacked thematic coherence compared to other Scorsese films, despite the amazing scenes.
That's a minority view, I think. Most see the strong negative reactions to the characters as proof of its success in portraying that world honestly.
And some even admitted feeling a tiny bit sorry for Henry at the end. Not excusing him, but acknowledging the messiness of betrayal and survival.
Yeah, it's complicated. People also mentioned Casino as the Vegas follow-up, detailing the mob's expansion and fall there, and recommended a History Buff's video for a maybe more sympathetic look at the real Henry Hill.
But the consensus seems to be groundbreaking for its time,
Mhm.
showing the lifestyle, the personalities based on a real story.
Although one user argued Casino is actually better because the characters are deeper. Interesting take.
Some see that warped romanticism, again understanding Henry's desire for more, even while showing the brutal code. But for many, it's just Ray Liotta nailing it, and this sheer excitement.
Yeah. And someone pointed out The Wolf of Wall Street might be more guilty of glamorizing its subject, and, of course, the funny house scene.
Classic. Perfectly captures Tommy's menace and Henry's fear.
Totally. Okay, so we've heard what audiences think. Let's get into how this whole thing actually got made.
This is where Nicholas Pileggi's account of writing Wise Guy is gold. He met Henry Hill, who initially seemed more interested in scamming the publisher.
Chuckles, typical.
Yeah.
But Pileggi said their talks deepened, and he kind of became Hill's unofficial shrink.
And Scorsese, from the start, wanted to get past the stereotypes, right? Show them as human, funny families. But, yeah, they also commit horrible crimes for money.
De Niro said something similar, acknowledging the pull of the bad guy in America, but stressing we need to remember what they really represent. Scorsese himself said it's about profit. Tommy gets killed because he's bad for business, too reckless.
Even Scorsese's own mother, Catherine, who's in the film, was apparently shocked by all the killing.
It shows how committed they were to not sanitizing it. And that collaboration between Scorsese and De Niro was clearly vital. Huge mutual respect there.
Paul Sorvino's insight about Scorsese's direction, using verbs, not nouns. Question him, not be suspicious. That's fascinating.
It is much more active. And Scorsese was adamant. He wasn't romanticizing violence. He wanted it to look real, cold, unfeeling, horrible, almost incidental, just business.
The effects guy even said the blood was made to look like the real thing, adding to that casual horror.
And Pileggi pointed out the language they used, wise guys, Goodfellas, crew, all euphemisms to soften the reality. De Niro even relied on Henry Hill for details because he couldn't talk to the real Jimmy Burke.
That famous Copacabana shot, the story behind it is amazing. They couldn't get access through the front door.
So they had to go through the kitchens, pure practicality.
But Scorsese found the meaning in it, didn't he? Representing Henry's whole life, seducing Karen, the lifestyle seducing him, all in one shot.
Yeah. And the cinematographer said, hey, long takes aren't always harder. Sometimes they're simpler, cheaper even, once you rehearse them.
And the little spider foot shooting connection to The Sopranos. Imperioli must have found that funny later.
He did. Scorsese said the film's speed came from watching street corner storytellers growing up, that energy, but also reacting against films getting too fast edited.
He also mentioned the grim reality, though. Short life expectancy for guys living like that.
The title designer wanted to link that speed to the freeze frames, like speeding cars, crime scenes.
And their final shot, Tommy shooting at the camera, a direct nod to the great train robbery, symbolizing Henry always looking over his shoulder.
Yeah. Despite the subject matter, actors like Bo Starr said the set was professional, positive.
Scorsese called the film an indictment, trying to make people angry about organized crime and how society lets it happen.
Pileggi noted that by then, the mafia wasn't the big public fear anymore. It was shifting towards random violence.
And the real Henry and Karen. Henry apparently said, wise guys love Goodfellas because it's real. Karen found it emotional, reliving it, but praised the actors.
Ray Liotta admitted liking Henry, despite it all. And Henry himself reflected on changing, not being that violent person anymore.
Imperioli felt like they knew they had a classic. Pileggi's analogy is great, too. Godfather is the view from the emperor. Goodfellas is the aide-de-camp, the everyday details.
And Henry Hill's final word? Goodfellas is the way we lived. That's the real mafia. Powerful stuff. Okay, let's shift from the making of to Ray Liotta's own perspective.
Yeah, that Empire interview from 2012 is really interesting. He looks back on his career, and obviously Goodfellas is huge. It's sweet how he talks about his daughter seeing it and him being embarrassed about being called a heartthrob.
He came to movies relatively late, didn't he? Something wild really put him on the map for that intensity. And the story of how he got the Henry Hill role, meeting Scorsese at Venice Film Festival.
Getting tackled by security.
Right. Right. And Scorsese apparently saw that as proof he had the right energy, though Scorsese was initially worried he might be too aggressive for Henry, who wasn't always the main muscle.
The studio wanted a bigger name, but De Niro coming on board helped Liotta get the part.
And Scorsese didn't want Liotta meeting the real Henry Hill before filming, but Liotta did talk to Pileggi and listen to tapes of Hill. He said Hill had no pretense, just casually recounted awful things.
Leo didn't see any point in the Goodfellas TV show either, stories told. And he talked about his mom being sick and passing away during filming. That must have been incredibly tough.
Really adds a layer. And the funny house scene, turns out Pesci improvised most of it in rehearsal based on a real experience. They wrote it into the script after that.
Wow. Liotta said he had no idea it would become so iconic at the time.
Nope. He also talked honestly about being disappointed sometimes, about not getting called for later Scorsese films, but seemed to understand it's just casting choices.
Yeah.
And Goodfellas wasn't actually a massive box office smash initially.
Surprising, looking back. He liked working with De Niro again on Copland, and he was hesitant about playing Sinatra, worried what people would think.
But he did it, and got pranked with a horse's head by Tina Sinatra. He seems pretty down-to-earth about his career ups and downs, even mentioning Operation Dumbo Drop, just part of the game.
Willing to do superhero movies or Snickers ads, now, if the price is right.
Gotta pay the bills. But the interview ends nicely, with his daughter thinking Goodfellas is the best movie ever. That's quite the endorsement. Okay, let's talk about something else absolutely crucial to the film's power. The soundtrack.
Ah, yes. The music in Goodfellas is practically another character, isn't it? It's not just background noise. Scorsese apparently picked everything out years in advance.
Yeah, the music editor said Scorsese knew all the songs 2 years before filming. That opening scene is the perfect example. Tony Bennett's Rags to Riches, so upbeat over that brutal violence.
And then Henry's voiceover. As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster. Sets up the whole rise and fall right there. Juxtaposition.
Exactly. And those early scenes, the doo-wop, the crooners, they track Henry's journey into the mob world. Then that jump cut, adult Henry, taking Karen through the Copa.
To the crystals, then he kissed me. Pure magic. Signals that whole new stage, romance, gangster life, all intertwined.
It really is.
Yeah.
And the wedding montage with the harptone's life is but a dream. It sounds lovely, but there's that hint of too good to be true, right? Foreshadowing.
And then the day-to-day stuff. Dean Martin, Aretha, Bobby Darin.
Yeah.
It makes mob life seem almost breezy, even in prison.
Yeah, Darren's Beyond the Sea playing while they're cooking lobster in jail is brilliant irony. But then things get darker, Henry gets into drugs, and the music shifts. The Rolling Stones' Gimme Shelter comes in.
The classic Scorsese choice. Signals danger, a turn for the worse.
Definitely. Then you get Christmas music during the Lufthansa heist celebration, but it quickly turns sour. Derek and the Dominoes Layla for Tommy's death.
That piano outro. Devastating.
Scorsese actually played it on set for the actors, and Cream's Sunshine of Your Love as Jimmy starts killing everyone off. The paranoia ramps up.
And the climax, Henry's Paranoid Day from Hell,
What?
just wall-to-wall rock music. Nilsson, Stones again, The Who. It's frantic. The glamour's completely gone.
It mirrors his state of mind perfectly. And the final song, Sid Vicious covering Sinatra's My Way. Just genius.
Total opposite vibes, right? Punk anarchy over Sinatra's smooth confidence perfectly captures Henry's fall. And Outcast singing about doing it his way when his way led to this.
Exactly. It shows him longing for what he lost, but through this raw, defiant lens. The soundtrack is just a masterclass. It elevates everything: plot, themes, authenticity. It is the film in many ways.
Couldn't agree more. Okay, finally, let's look at how the film lines up with the real people and events.
Right. This article breaks it down nicely. Henry Hill, played by Liotta, yeah, he was involved with the Lucchese family, the Lufthansa heist, turned informant. That's all true.
James, Jimmy the Gent. Conway De Niro's character, based on James Burke. Feared guy, mastermind of heists like Lufthansa, ruthless, killed Billy Bats, accurate.
Tommy DeVito Pesci's unforgettable role, based on Thomas DeSimone. Volatile hitman known for his temper, killed Bats. His recklessness got him killed. Check.
Paulie. Cicero Sorvino's character, that's Paul Vario, calm boss, Lucchese family, mentored Henry, involved in Lufthansa, also accurate.
Karen Hill Lorraine Bracco, based on Henry's wife. Drawn in, then disillusioned, went into witness protection with him.
Yep. Even Billy Bats, the guy Tommy kills for the insult, based on a real Gambino-made man, William Billy Bats DeVino.
And the article tracks their fates. Henry Hill died in 2012 after years in witness protection. Burke died in prison in 1996. DeSimone was murdered in 79. Vario died of natural causes in 88 after a conviction.
So the film really stuck close to the core facts, weaving them into that incredible narrative. It captured the allure and the danger. No wonder it has such a lasting impact.
And you can't talk about the film without mentioning the source. Pileggi's book, Wise Guy.
Right. The foundation for everything.
His book, Wise Guy, Life in a Mafia Family, gives you the whole story. Henry starting out at 11, working for Vario, early arrests, army time, but still doing crime.
Meeting Karen, eloping, the affairs.
Yeah. And the book details the Billy Bats murder in 1970, Burke planning the Lufthansa heist in 78. It's all laid out.
And it ends with Hill's drug bust in 1980 and him flipping, going into WITSEC because he was terrified Burke and Vario would kill him.
Exactly. Wise Guy provided that incredibly rich, detailed first-hand account that Scorsese then brought to life so vividly.
Okay, so wrapping up this deep dive,
Yeah.
what are the main takeaways? Goodfellas is clearly this really complex, much debated look at the gangster world, always showing that pull, that glamour, right next to the brutal reality.
Definitely. And it's a film that pushes boundaries stylistically, but it's anchored in true events and real complicated people. So you've hopefully got a much richer understanding now of all its layers, the filmmaking, the cultural impact, the real lives behind it all.
Which brings us to a final thought for you, the listener. Given all the talk about glorification, the content warnings, what do you think the responsibility of filmmakers is when they portray crime? Is Goodfellas ultimately a cautionary tale? Or is it something else, something more ambiguous?
Yeah, that's something to really chew on. This deep dive, it's just scratching the surface, really. We definitely encourage you to watch Goodfellas again, or maybe pick up Wise Guy, explore these themes more, and, draw your own conclusions about this amazing and still challenging piece of cinema.
So anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this look at one of my favorite films. Subscribe for more at Crime Breach.